Good evening. I'm Marjorie Egan.
And I'm Jim Browdy, and welcome to the only 60 minutes in America free of, how should I put this? Let me put it euphemistically, free of the craziness we are never free from anymore. It's a strange night, but a wonderful night. I know we'd all like to be together. We will be next year, but consider this. If we were, for those of you who are already home in your pajamas, you'd have to be fully dressed. So treasure the moment. I want to start by thanking three incredibly generous individual sponsors, Drea Ferrara, Lisa Goodwin Robbins, and Andrew Robbins, Deanna and Sydney Wolk. Once again, thank you for your incredible, incredible generosity.
Okay, I am so honored to be here tonight to help get the word out on the environmental causes of breast cancer. I've been a reporter all my adult life, a real news junkie. I had no idea about the dangerous chemicals and products I've been buying for decades for myself and for my kids. I just figured CVS or Target couldn't sell bathroom disinfectants or toothpaste or shampoos that weren't deemed safe by the FDA or somebody in the government. Well, now I've learned not true. Here, can you see this? This is my before I knew about Silent Spring deodorant. It's Mitchum deodorant. It is all loaded up with aluminum, sesquichlorohydrate, whatever that is. Here is my post-Silent Spring deodorant, the aptly named Primal Pit Paste. It is aluminum and paraben free, but there's more. Here is my pre-Silent Spring moisturizer. You may recognize this. It's 30% petrolatum, which is kind of nauseating. But here's my post-Silent Spring moisturizer. You can maybe see it's half empty. It's called Alba Botanical. No fragrance, no parabens, no phosphates, no animal testing, and no connection to fossil fuels. I could go on, but I think you get my point. Silent Spring needs the biggest bullhorn possible so everybody knows about the health dangers, not just in our air and our water, but also under our own kitchen sinks and in our own bathroom cabinets. Most important, Silent Spring needs that bullhorn so we can do something to change this.
You know, an important organization, Marjorie, becomes even more important in the time of coronavirus. Tonight is a celebration of science. Does everybody out there remember science? Remember science? It was a great thing. There's a clear connection between the health of our environment and our personal health. Silent Spring is the only organization that studies that in a way that they can prevent things like breast cancer and other diseases. And they are working so hard to ensure that the burden is transferred from consumers to major corporations and regulators so that products are produced so that we can stay safe. But you knew that. You also knew that good work costs money. So we're not here just to celebrate a wonderful organization and the wonderful things it does. We're here to support that organization. So how do you support Silent Spring tonight? And by the way, I just got a text. I was told to check it. I am checking it. Marjorie, we have already gotten a $25,000 anonymous donation. We thank that person. Obviously, we're doing a hell of a job raising money, you and me, don't you think?
Yeah, very, very impressive. Right out of the box. I'm very impressed.
I don't think we can claim credit for that, but that's okay. So here's the deal. Here's how you do this. In a second, you're going to see QR codes on your screen. The QR code on the bottom left is for a general donation. The QR code on the bottom right gets you to this silent auction. And by the way, to do this, to use the QR codes, you got to have your streaming, the screen on which you're doing the streaming of this program, in full screen mode. You got to do that. Speaking of silent auction, can you take a second and just share with people, Marjorie, what are a couple of the items that you're really loving tonight?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of great things. Listen to this. Virtual cooking lessons with two chefs. I love this one. Books for a book group where the author actually shows up. The actual author comes to the book group. Lunch with Julia Brody, which is a pretty neat thing. And then, well, you do this one, Jim. You do this one.
No, you are a sad case, Marjorie. The one she doesn't want to do is dinner with my two favorite people. That would be Marjorie. Right. I know you're too shy for that kind of thing. But let me tell you, we've been really fortunate. The last couple of years, we've done that. People have been incredibly generous. at Silent Spring, $10,000. Last year bid by two different groups of people to have dinner. This year, here's the deal. If you win us, so to speak, we could do a virtual thing with you if you want to do that soon. If you want to wait till there's a vaccine so we can do it in person, that'd be a great celebration too. But do it. And I have a bigger ego than Marjorie, which most of you listen to our work know. As big as it may be, people are not donating $10,000 for a dinner because we're fine conversationalists. They're doing it because they love and respect and know they need the incredible fine work of Silent Spring. Now, let me start by telling you we have a matching gift, $150,000 from an anonymous donor, $150,000. You know how a match works? Look at the look on Marjorie's face. You give $1, it becomes $2. You give $100, it becomes $200. That's the good news. Every dollar is matched up to $150,000. The bad news is if we don't meet the match, the money disappears. It goes away. So it's really important we do this. 3 ways you can give. I want to repeat. 1, you can make a direct donation. That's the QR code on the left. You can bid in the auction, a QR code on the right. And by the way, if you bid and someone outbids you, you'll get an email. So you'll stay caught up with that. And you can also do it in a chat box. I'll explain that in a minute. But I first want to explain how the QR code works. It could not be simpler. You open the camera app on your phone. You focus on the QR code as if you're about to take a picture, like right there. You don't have to take a picture, though. A banner will appear at the top of your screen. You click on the banner. It opens your web browser and you just start bidding. So do that. And by the way, there is nothing that precludes, I want to be totally clear, you want to go to the left and make a donation, you want to go to a right and do some shopping. We're more than happy to have you do both to support this wonderful cause. And then finally, the third way of giving, for those of you who are, how did you describe yourself before the show to me, Marjorie? Tech insecure, is that what you said?
A tad.
Okay. By the way, the QR code thing is incredibly easy, but if you don't want to do that, you can do the chat box. You just put in your name, your phone number, the amount you want to give. A Silent Spring person will contact you immediately over the show. Everything is private, and whatever you put in the chat box will only be seen by event people and nobody else. I want to say one more thing until we get to some of the fun parts of the program. I'd really urge you to donate now. I'm betting that virtually everybody in this audience tonight has raised money for something they care about, they love in the past. And I know if you've done that, you are aware there is nothing more stressful in the universe than being at an event or creating an issue where you're hoping the money's going to come in and you don't know. And the greatest stress reliever is early giving. So I would urge anybody and everybody who is here tonight because they love the work and they value the work of this organization, make your contribution now so everybody's blood pressure stays under control. Now, speaking of blood pressure, if you want yours lowered even further and have a calm spread over you that is quite beautiful, we're joined by Grammy Award winner and fantastic singer-songwriter, Lisa Loeb. Her work has been featured on television, on radio, in the movies. She's got a new, I don't know if you call it a CD or an album anymore, whatever it is, she's got a new thing. I love the title. It's called A Simple Trick to Happiness, to which I say, if only. So Lisa is joining us from California. The first thing she's going to perform tonight is the #1 hit that every one of you has heard. Every one of you, including me, has sung in the shower many a time. It's called Stay. Joining us is the great Lisa Loeb.
Hi, I'm here in Los Angeles in my office/guest bedroom where no one is staying because everybody's staying at home these days. Thank you so much for having me here. I was asked by my friend Catie Curtis, who's another singer-songwriter who also went to Brown University like I did, to be a part of this Silent Spring event tonight. And although I was also supposed to be on the road touring the world with my new album that you mentioned, A Simple Trick to Happiness, I am not. I am touring the world from this room right here. So I'm so glad to be here with you. I probably have kids I know I have kids in the other room. They're supposed to be either in their virtual school right now, or they're probably watching TV and playing video games. I'm not sure because I'm here with you. Anyway, I am so happy to be part of this event tonight because it's such a wonderful organization, so Silent Spring. The Institute, as a mother of these young children, it is important for me to know what's safe for me, for my family. And I really appreciate the kind of information that Silent Spring studies and that they provide us, regular people, with information about avoiding toxic chemicals in the environment. And I also want to say that, yes, in the current climate of things, I value science. My family values science. And it's so important for us to be, here with an organization that supports science. Remember science? I know you do. Anyway, I'm going to play my song Stay now, that was also aforementioned. We just celebrated its 26th anniversary. It's a song I started writing in New York City. I finished writing in Boston. And it ended up on a soundtrack for a movie called Reality Bites, and in the movie, and it went to #1 in 1994. So because it's the top song of mine, the request, I'm going to play this song for you first. You say I only hear what I want to. And you say I talk so all the time. So, and I thought what felt was simple, and I thought that I don't belong. And now that I am leaving, now I know that I did something wrong, 'cause I missed you. Yeah, I missed you. And you say I only hear what I want to. I don't listen hard, don't pay attention to the distance that you're running to anyone, anywhere. I don't understand if you really care. I'm only hearing negative, no bad. So I turn the radio on, turn the radio up, and this woman was singing my song. Lovers in love and the others run away. Lover is crying 'cause the other won't stay. His mother's heaven and we weep for the other who was dying since the day they were born. Well, this is not that thing that I'm throwing, but I'm thrown. And I thought I'd live forever, but now I'm not so sure. You try to tell me that I'm clever, but that won't take me anyhow or anywhere with you. You said that I was naive, and I thought that I was strong. Oh, I thought, hey, I can leave. Oh, now I know that I was wrong, 'cause I missed you. Yeah, I missed you. You said you caught me 'cause you want me, and one day you'll let me go. You try to give away a keeper, or keep me 'cause you know you're just so scared to lose. And you say stay. You say I'm only here what I want to. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What a great way to start the evening. I'm now honored to introduce Silent Spring's Executive Director and Senior Scientist, Dr. Julia Brody. Dr. Brody leads Silent Spring Institute's strategic approach to uncovering the environmental links to breast cancer. As you all know, she's a nationally recognized expert on environmental chemicals and breast cancer, as well as a leader in community-based research and public engagement in science. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Julia Brody.
It's wonderful to be with you, friends in Boston and far away this year. Before we get started, though, Silent Spring lost a treasured member of our community this fall. Dr. Jack Urban, who served on our board of directors for 24 years, passed away last month. We'll have a chance to celebrate him later in this hour. We invited you to a conversation about public health this evening because this really tough year brought into focus in a new way the interdependency of our own health with the health of others around us and the responsibility to repair the environmental injustice linked to race. That's what public health is about. We're in this together. We have obligations to each other and to the most vulnerable among us. With your support, Silent Spring was able to keep doing our work to prevent breast cancer and also to address the extraordinary incoming crises of COVID-19 and climate disasters and the long overdue national reckoning on race. We were able to do this because the breast carcinogens we study, air and water pollutants, and hormone disruptors in everyday products, are also relevant to each of these issues. We're learning more and more how environmental and social stresses add up. In fact, this idea of multiple stresses and multiple pathways to breast cancer is part of the new cancer science that Silent Spring has helped pioneer. If we don't consider multiple pathways to disease, we put women at risk. For instance, a few years ago, a Cape Cod resident wrote to us looking for information on an herbicide called triclopyr. Utility companies were planning to spray it below power lines to control weeds. We know that the pesticide DDT increases breast cancer risk, so we decided to look into it. It turned out that EPA's registration documents for triclopyr noted 2 studies in which rodents developed mammary gland tumors after being exposed. Why was this chemical approved? When we looked further, examining more than 400 pesticide registrations, we found 28 pesticides linked with mammary gland tumors. But the thing is, the evidence was dismissed because these pesticides didn't fit the narrow preconception of a carcinogen that acts by damaging DNA. Instead, the pesticides act as endocrine disruptors, for instance by interfering with estrogen and progesterone, hormones known to influence breast cancer. With this evidence, we're now calling on EPA to update its policies and to consider the multiple ways a chemical can cause cancer. That's the goal of our Safer Chemicals program, to find chemicals that activate pathways to cancer and remove them from use. You shouldn't have to be exposed to carcinogens when you walk your dog under the power lines. The pesticides we identified are also used as preservatives in cosmetics, to grow crops, and to preserve food. And that needs to stop. You know, half our research is supported by competitive grants from NIH and other federal agencies. But not this investigation of outdated science at EPA. This work depends on you. The most successful approaches to public health prevent disease before it happens. You're taking that upstream approach for breast cancer when you support Silent Spring. We couldn't do this without you. And thinking of vital, innovative approaches to research, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rachel Morello-Frosch, this year's recipient of the Rachel Carson Advocacy Award. Dr. Morello-Frosch is a professor at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health and leader of the Sustainability and Health Equity Lab. When I first met Rachel nearly 20 years ago, she was a new professor at Brown. And we had just finished the household exposure study on Cape Cod, and we're looking to expand the research to include new and different communities. I had one in mind. When my sister's first baby was newborn, I held her in my arms on my sister's porch in Richmond, California, and looked out at the flaring oil refinery, sending smoke and flames over the neighborhood, and thought, what are we doing to this little girl's future? So when we brainstormed for ways to expand the study, I thought, well, why not Richmond, California? And Rachel, because of the trust she's earned with communities and environmental justice organizations across California and the country, was able to make that happen. She is not a helicopter scientist who lands in communities, collects data, and zooms back out. She's on the ground, working collaboratively to understand problems and stand with community members all the way through the policy process to create change. Thanks to Rachel's partnership, Silent Spring won our first NIH grant for research to link breast cancer advocacy with environmental justice in Richmond. Community members ultimately won a court case that stopped expansion of the Chevron refinery. And because we found high levels of flame retardants, allies won policy changes to get toxic flame retardants out of furniture. Rachel is a 24/7 social justice and public health advocate, walking the talk as a mom, too. Sports fans, Dr. Morello Frosch is the mother of University of Illinois football star Milo Eifler, who's inspired by his mom to become a public health advocate himself, getting quoted in Sports Illustrated and Forbes about COVID risks for college athletes. Rachel, thank you for your partnership with Silent Spring for almost 20 years, bringing knowledge and power to communities that need it most.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you to the board and staff of Silent Spring for this distinguished award. When I was composing my remarks, I was surprised to realize just how embedded Rachel Carson's spirit has been in my life. In addition to sharing a first name, I have been living with a breast cancer diagnosis for 27 years. And now the spirit of Rachel Carson returns through this amazing award from Silent Spring Institute, one of my favorite organizations ever. Let me tell you why. I first worked with Julie and Ruth Ann when we launched the Household Exposure Study in Richmond, California. Since then, we have collaborated on other projects, the most recent being the Women Worker Biomonitoring Collaborative, which is the first biorepository to measure exposures to environmental chemicals in women firefighters, nurses, and office workers in San Francisco. This project started when women firefighters reached out to us because they were concerned about elevated breast cancer rates in their ranks. Nationally, women make up only 5% of the firefighting workforce, but they make up 16% of firefighters in San Francisco due to a lawsuit that ended discriminatory hiring practices against women and people of color. The fruits of that desegregation struggle can be seen across the fire department, including the last two chiefs who are women. Yet women firefighters face environmental hazards that increase their risk of cancers, including very likely breast cancer. Our study shows that women firefighters have high levels of some PFAS, known as forever chemicals, and flame retardants that may be related to the use of firefighting foams and certain gear. In addition to our research, Silent Spring has deployed its amazing digital tools so that we can inform study participants about the chemical exposures we've measured in their bodies. Their commitment to Right to Know allows our study participants to learn about personal and collective actions they can take to reduce their exposures. Because Silent Spring knows that when you engage communities in the scientific enterprise, they become the change agents that move research to action. And some examples of that include the fact that San Francisco is considering ordinances on furniture containing flame retardants, the passage of California legislation that bans the manufacture, sale, and use of PFAS firefighting foams, and changes in worker comp rules for presumptive illnesses in firefighters to cover breast cancer. Breast cancer activists created Silent Spring as a lab of our own, an organization that would think outside the box and even stir up what the late John Lewis called good trouble to advance scientific understanding about environmental links to breast cancer. Silent Spring has shifted discourse about breast cancer from an individual problem to a public health issue. And this vision was prescient, especially given current threats against the role of science in decision-making and the rollback of environmental regulations that protect community health. So I'm thankful to those visionaries who created this lab of our own and the board members, staff, and donors who ensure that Silent Spring continues to grow and thrive. Now more than ever, we all need to dig deep in our pockets to keep this amazing organization going. Personally, I feel like my life and the health of diverse communities across the country depend upon it. Thank you.
So what I think we should do to change all that is why don't we have a wild round of applause for this great organization and all of its wonderful staff. Can we do that right now, please? That includes you in the back. Can we get everybody? Exactly. It's wonderful. Now, Marjorie, You want to
Yeah.
describe to people, sorry to laugh, how people should make a donation. Why don't you do that,
No,
Marjorie?
that's okay. You can describe the donation thing, but Jim,
Yeah.
there's a fly. There's a fly on your head. It's been there quite a
Don't do
while.
this. Don't do this.
Okay. Okay. If you don't get my little attempt at a joke, you just have to Google fly and something will come right up.
Okay, it was a very little attempt at a joke, I should say. Thank you very much. So have you donated yet? Donations are rolling in, but they got to keep rolling, and the speed of that roll has got to increase. By the way, let me just look at my phone so I can tell you what the latest is. We just received a $15,000 anonymous donation, 2,500, 1,000, lots of hundreds. On the silent auction, though, there are a ton of things that are terrific on which there are no bids. So you could probably get a steal. The pearl necklace, the Nike golf set, personal virtual fitness class. Again, the donations are coming in, but we got to keep them coming in. I want to remind you, if you forgot, we have a $150,000 match from an anonymous donor, and I'm going to explain it to you one more time. A match means every dollar becomes two, every 100 becomes 200. But to use that tired old expression, you either use it or you lose it. If we don't raise the 150 grand, a significant chunk of that 150 grand disappears. So please do it now. Again, the QR codes, the bottom left hand of your screen is to donate, just a straight donation. Bottom right hand portion of your screen, silent auction. And remember the QR code, if you're intimidated, and I was until I went to a restaurant a few weeks ago, I finally figured it out. You open the camera app on your phone. You hold the camera over the QR code. You don't have to take a picture. A banner will appear on the top of the screen. Click on it, and voila, it happens. Let me just say, before we have another wonderful performance here, being here is fabulous, and we are thrilled to have every one of you, and I know Marjorie and I are thrilled to be here too. But this is about supporting the work and sustaining the incredible work that Silent Spring and nobody else in this country does. So please dig deep. You can use during this next performance, if you want to apply for a second mortgage, that's fine too. Do whatever you've got to do to give even more than you thought you were going to do when the night began. Please do it now. Our next treat is performance by singer-songwriter Deb Talan. Deb is joining us from Iowa City, though her roots are in Massachusetts. This is pretty great, Marjorie. I don't know if I told you this. All three of the featured singers, Deb's about to be the second, Catie in a little while will be the third, all three attended Brown University in the 1980s.
Wow. Very impressive.
Oh, very impressive.
Very, very smart women. Isn't that what that means? Very, very smart.
True.
A lot of smart women here tonight.
Very well said. Now, Deb is best known for being half the incredible duo, the Weebies. They're great and can also hold her own, as you will hear, as a celebrated solo singer-songwriter. Please join me in welcoming Deb Talan.
Thanks for that introduction, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Talan. I'm a songwriter in the folk band The Weebies. I'm a mom. I'm a friend, and an artist and a survivor of breast cancer. I'm sitting on my back porch here in Iowa, about to play a song for you called Say Goodbye to Adeline and May, which is a song I wrote right before I had breast surgery 6 years ago. The tongue-in-cheek part of the song is saying goodbye to the girls, and the heavier, deeper part of the song is saying goodbye to some version of myself that I wasn't quite ready to say goodbye to yet. It brought up all kinds of ways I'd never made peace with my female body as it was. And inside the song, I feel like I was attempting to hold on to how I felt sad with the loss, but glad to be staying alive, curious about life from here on out. Songs weave together so many different strands of life. I probably don't even know all the strands in this one, but I hope you find it rich enough to feel some of your own experience in the listening to it. Here it is, Say Goodbye to Adeline and May, offered with gratitude for the important work being done at Silent Spring. Thanks.
I'll tell you, a pretty powerful introduction to a song, but so now let's hear it. The worldwide debut, Say Goodbye to Adeline and May.
waiting for the dam to break. Waiting for the next mistake. And it's a grand heartache, a fond farewell to welcome you across the state line. And take your time and say goodbye to Adeline May. We never got to get it right, and now there are no words to say. Just move on, Rover. Now it's over. Steal the bacon on the run. Take a ticket and you won. The game had just begun. You had to stop to hear the band playing in your heart. That's how you started to say goodbye to Adeline May. We never got to get it right, and now there are no words to say. Just move on, Rover. Now it's over. I got sisters by the score, and we all shine like windows. The liquid light, the darkness kindles. Stay right here, 'cause we know how to live, how to grow. Just let 'em go and say goodbye to Adeline May. We never got to get it right, and now there are no words to say. Just move on, Rover. Move on, move on, move on. Now it's over. Over.
Thanks so much to Deb Talan. Thank you for that beautiful song. We're grateful you could be with us tonight. I want to remind you all about the QR codes. I'll remind you all about the auction. And now we're going to move on to our panel discussion. So what we're trying to do here tonight, and we've heard Dr. Brody talk about this already, is to explain the vital role of public health preventing breast cancer by stressing its environmental risk factors. We've heard so much during COVID-19 about the terrible weaknesses in our public health system, and we want to show how environmental exposures, in particular, disparities in exposures, are a major health issue. Reducing exposures to toxic chemicals, though, it can't be just an individual effort. It has to be a collective effort to create healthier chemicals and products in home and workplaces and communities, and to protect our most vulnerable. That effort absolutely requires that we do have a very strong public health infrastructure that prioritizes reducing those environmental exposures. So we'd like to introduce our panelists. You've already seen Dr. Julia Brody, the Executive Director of Silent Spring. She's with us again. Dr. Rachel Morello-Frosch, a professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy and Management and the School of Public Health at University of California at Berkeley, and Dr. Michelle Williams, Dean of the Faculty at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and Angelopoulos, Professor of Public Health and International Development, a joint faculty appointment at the Harvard Chan School and the Harvard Kennedy School. Thank you both, all three of you, for being with us tonight. So let's start with the current pandemic. We've heard a lot already tonight, and we're going to hear about it again, about the public health system. But what exactly is the public health system? Let's start with Dean Williams. What is it?
Thank you, Marjorie, for that question. It's the easy question of the night, I suppose. But let me just take a moment and congratulate you, Rachel, on the well-deserved award, and Julia for the outstanding work that you do, at Silent Spring. Marjorie, public health is an evidence-based, science-driven discipline that is focused on doing everything it can to bring the best of science to promote health, prevent diseases, and allow this goal to be reached on a population scale. Public health is essentially seeking to bring forth the best possible evidence that can allow populations to develop normally and avoid physical toxins, environmental exposures, as well as non-environmental exposures that would do anything to attenuate one's full development to their maximum potential. Public health is the science that prioritizes prevention and identification of risks that would impact development across the life course. And you've heard in this evening many different references to how one has to use the best science we have to ensure that chemicals in the environment that can disrupt our ecosystem, that might impact a developing fetus or impact our metabolism, that might in some way cause a developmental disease or a disease like cancer, that we are doing the best we can to avoid preventable illnesses. And we do that through science, and we do that through educating individuals about risks and minimizing those risks as best that we can. Public health is essentially done at the scale of populations. It's not clinical medicine. It is way upstream of what happens in the hospital. Public health is essentially those activities and those factors that determine 80 to 90% of our health and wellness. They are outside of the hospital, in places where we live, where we work, where we learn, where we play. It is the science that helps us understand those personal products that may include compounds that bring risks to our health and well-being.
Dr. Brody, you already addressed the public health, some of it before, but elaborate on that a little bit.
Thanks. Dean Williams, thank you so much for joining us this year when public health is at the front of everyone's minds. And I think we can forget, though, that for breast cancer, public health includes our environmental laws, like the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Air Act and the fuel efficiency standards. These are laws that have already reduced breast carcinogens like benzene and PAHs in the air that we all breathe. And so when we switch to clean energy and electric cars, that's a public health program for breast cancer. There are some outrageous acts, though, Marjorie. It makes perfect sense that you thought that ingredients had to be tested before they could go into consumer products. Yeah. But in the US, no, they do not. So that means widespread exposures to chemicals that mimic estrogen and could raise the risk for breast cancer. So we need to follow through with science-based approaches to change that. And that will be the big new advance in public health for breast cancer.
So, Dean Williams, how do we get to this pretty sorry state of affairs that public health has become almost an afterthought? We've heard that over and over during this coronavirus disaster.
Yeah, that is really one of the bad lessons learned that's been brought here. Of all of the money that we spend on health care and health in the United States, only 2.5% of those funds go to supporting public health systems. Public health is grossly underfunded. It is estimated that to adequately fund public health systems, public health workforce, and public health infrastructure, we would need to increase the budget for public health by a magnitude of $4.9 billion. We are in this sad state of affairs largely because public health has been pushed aside. Public health has not had the primacy that it deserves, that we all now see that it has in securing the national security and the economic security of society. We have to use this moment, quite honestly, Marjorie, it's a painful lesson learned, but to never go back to a place where we're so ill prepared in not having adequate tools, not having a sufficiently well-positioned workforce, and not having the supply chain of basic equipment to support the workforce that is needed to promote and preserve public health. It's hard for people to really understand when public health is successful, because when public health is successful, nothing happens. We don't have breast cancer. We don't have the child with the birth defect. We have clean water. We're not worried about what happened in Flint, Michigan. So what we have to remember is the returns on investment in public health often go unseen and underappreciated. And so we in public health also have to make a stronger case that when nothing happens that's bad for your health and bad for population health, someone can say, brought to you by public health, you have lived longer, live healthier, nothing bad happened. That's a hard sell in our general way of going about things. And so we do also have to get better. I love what Rachel said about empowering, enabling our citizens to be citizen scientists. Because if more of us knew exactly what prevention means for ourselves and for our family, for our economy, for our national security, there would be less likely going forward that we would have our leaders undervalue and put public health aside.
Well, Rachel, the other thing we've heard constantly during this pandemic is the disparities, the environmental injustice in communities of color and among poor people. So we've heard this before. I think it's been accented now, but do you think we're finally going to address this time?
Well, I mean, I think I'm in California. We're at the eye of the storm of the pandemic, as well as the wildfires and vulnerable communities that are still having to do things like farm workers harvesting food with poor air quality, pesticide exposures, and increased risk of these pandemic outbreaks that are making people quite sick and high mortality rates in that vulnerable population. And then nationally, I think these protests around police brutality, Black and brown community, making the connections around I can't breathe, around air quality, COVID, which is a respiratory illness, and police brutality are starting to make us think more holistically about what we need to do to make change that protects public health and advances environmental justice. So an example in California that I'd like to point to is we have a climate change law, and several years ago, a lot of power companies saw the writing on the wall that their power companies were no longer going to be efficient and emit too many greenhouse gases. And so they shut them down. 8 power plants closed in a span of about 8 years. And within a year of those power plants shutting down, preterm birth rates in those surrounding communities went down by 2%. And the positive impact was most dramatic for African American women and Asian women. So I can tell you, if we invented a drug that reduced preterm birth by 2%, investors would think that was a blockbuster. So I think that gets to what Michelle was saying about, public health is when something good happens or nothing happens. And I think we can really do a good job at kind of showing that more to push for change.
Well, I think a lot of us are under a lot of false impressions. And one of them, we think of breast cancer basically as an individual issue. Silent Spring approaches it very differently as a public health issue. So, Dr. Brody, talk about that again. I mean, the public health connection with breast cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Breast cancer is not about some one thing a woman did wrong along the way. It's a public health program, public health problem, and it's our responsibility to protect everyone and the next generation proactively. We have a lot of evidence that that's possible, that breast cancer can be prevented. First of all, most breast cancers are not due to inherited genes. So it's something that happens to your genes after you're born. And second, we know that many of the chemicals that we encounter every day can trigger biological changes that are linked to breast cancer, like disrupting estrogen. And we know that the breast is particularly vulnerable during times when it's changing, before birth, during puberty, and during pregnancy. So those studies about preterm birth, those are important windows of vulnerability, both for the mom and for the daughter. So thank you for that research, Rachel. That's a breast cancer study. So part of the research that Silent Spring does is aimed at identifying the chemicals that have these breast cancer relevant effects and learning how people are exposed so we can change that. And some of you watching tonight volunteered as citizen scientists in our crowdsourced Detox Me Action Kit study that was aimed at finding out how well people could do at avoiding estrogen-like chemicals by carefully selecting their personal products and cleaners. We just published the results in a scientific journal last week. In general, people in the study did great. Most of them were reading labels and taking other steps to avoid chemicals like parabens and benzophenone that are in cosmetics and soaps and other products. And the levels of these chemicals in their bodies were lower than the US average. For those who weren't in the study or haven't tried this yet and want to try reducing your exposure, we have a free smartphone app called Detox Me that gives some easy tips. But yeah, there are about 280 tips in there, but the app will carefully direct you to the ones that are most relevant. And you can just take on a couple tips a day for a little while and earn some badges there. But our Detox Me Action Kit study also found that there are still hidden exposures that even our own scientific team couldn't avoid. When the results came back, the 2 lead scientists on the study had the highest levels of 2 chemicals, BPS and BPF. And since they were both high, we wondered if it might be something at the office, and we tested the water. But in the end, we couldn't explain it. And that's just one example of why you can't shop your way out of the problem. And we need these public health approaches to keep risky chemicals out of products in the first place.
Dr. Morello-Frosch, how do we build a better public health system, and what should we prioritize in doing that?
Well, I think, one of the things is to really think about systems change and more systems thinking in policy making. So even though I do breast cancer research, I'm also really interested in understanding how policy improves health more generally. So that's why I gave you the example of our climate change laws, because in addition to regulating greenhouse gases, it's getting industry to pay for something they used to be able to do for free, which is emit greenhouse gases to incentivize them to reduce their emissions. And those funds are now being used to invest in communities in California, everything from affordable housing, pollution reduction in communities that are disproportionately impacted by hazardous facilities. So all of a sudden you have this holistic environmental policy that is now morphed into something that's more like social and civil rights policy, in part because communities themselves have been at the table in shaping those regulations and influencing the decisions about where those investments go in the state. So I just really think that more systems thinking, more holistic thinking about how do we merge goals around civil rights, environmental health, and social justice in our policies, whether we're thinking about climate change or housing policy or transit-related policies. And then we as public health data nerds, if you will, how do we do a better job of quantifying those benefits to society so that people really realize that these strategies are really, really good for everybody, and especially when we merge the efforts around environmental health and social justice in our policymaking.
So should we be harassing our local officials to get something done here, the politicians, to refund the money that has not been in public health, either Dean Williams or Dr. Brody, either one of you?
I think we shouldn't harass them. We shouldn't harass them, but we should invite them for coffee, and we should sit down and we should talk about the co-benefits that can be gained by thinking in a systems-wide way. The co-benefits that can be gained by taking the best science we have and making sure they're written into policies that will enhance and support optimal health and wellness. And they will begin to see that there is truth to the statement, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. What we have to do is get policymakers to appreciate that the science of public health is the way to maximally impact in a very positive way those engines that drive economies. If we can, for example, diminish the amount of toxic chemicals that are causing breast cancer, we'll also be doing much benefit to reduce chemically caused type 2 diabetes, chemically caused preterm birth, chemically caused delayed mental development. And so we have to do exactly what Rachel said, is communicate the impact and the power of bringing science forward into policy that will have far-reaching benefits on population health and subsequently the economy.
We are almost out of time. Go ahead. We're almost out of time.
It's an enormous benefit that breast cancer costs $20 billion a year just in medical costs. So we have a big, and I would underline everything that Dean Williams said and just offer that that's where Silent Spring is really trying to take the science upstream to provide the evidence that those policymakers need.
Well, I just want to add, I'm so glad you talked about the Detox app, because for regular people like me, it's a real life changer to be able to go on your phone and look at what you should buy and what you shouldn't buy. It's really been a big deal, as I told you about my primal pit paste before. Please thank all our wonderful panelists here tonight, Julia Brody, Dean Williams, and Rachel Morello-Foch. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I want to introduce Jean Mockford. Jean has been on the board of Silent Spring for over 11 years. She's a private investment manager and also runs a girls' summer camp in Virginia. And she's here to introduce a very special tribute to one of the all-time greats. We talked to him about him earlier tonight, Dr. Jack Urban.
Thank you, Marjorie. I have been given the honor of introducing a wonderful tribute to our longstanding board member, Dr. Jack Urban, who passed away September 2nd after a year-long battle with glioblastoma. We are privileged to have singer-songwriter Catie Curtis performing a song which she wrote especially for Jack. While you listen to her marvelous tribute, we'll share some memories of our friend and colleague. Catie mentioned that it was hard to stop at 4 verses because there's so much ground to cover. It's impossible to sum up Jack in 2 minutes. Really impossible. He has been a tireless ambassador for Silent Spring for 24 of our 26 years. Ellen Parker, one of our founders, worked with him at Tufts. She saw how unusual it was for a doctor to be so dedicated to prevention, and she invited him to join our board. Luckily, he said yes. Not only was he brave to join a board dedicated to, in his own words, putting himself out of business, but he was usually the only man in the room. He didn't seem to mind. We will need other doctors who are willing to address prevention to step up and help us with this journey. Who will carry on his legacy? His are tough shoes to fill. I always admired his energy for our board meetings, which started at 7 p.m., when I knew what his days were usually like, meeting cancer patient after cancer patient, and always being eager to help them solve their problems. He was tireless, internationally recognized, beloved, compassionate, brilliant, fun, kind, gentle, curious, and irreplaceable. He was a thought leader, a devoted clinician, a mentor to many, a professor, a crusader, a board member, a father, a husband, a grandfather, a brother, a great listener, and a problem solver. How did he manage to do it all so well and with a sense of humor? My dear friend Missy, a patient of Jack's, said to me a few days ago, "I feel sorry for all the women who will get misdiagnosed without him in their corner." Jack somehow found the time to be up to date on every piece of research available that might relate to his patients' needs and ensure that they received the best care possible. Jack was willing to sit down with you, listen, and be by your side as you walked through the scariest times of your life. Thank you, Jack, for everything. We miss you so much already.
We can never replace you. Your shoes too big to fill. Your heart of gold and a dream to fix what's broken. As we stand here without you, it's hard to go on. But we're lifted by all you've done and spoken. You're gonna live forever because of all you leave behind. Working to make things better for the greater good of humankind. You walk side by side with others on their uphill climb. When they came to see you, didn't matter who they were. You made time to sit down and listen, tirelessly searching for causes and cures to save lives. You were on a mission. You're gonna live forever because of all you leave behind. Working to make things better for the greater good of humankind. You walk side by side with others on their uphill climb. You walked side by side with others on their uphill climb.
Katie, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. 2 years ago, Marjorie, I think I told you this, I was lucky at this dinner to sit at a table with Jack and his son, Steve. And I remember the whole conversation, the whole time together, and I treasure it even more now. And I'll tell you, if you respect the work that Jack did and want to keep his legacy alive, there's one simple thing to do, which is make a contribution now to this incredible organization that he cared so much about. I was just listening to Marjorie's panel. If you're unconvinced or were unconvinced, you cannot listen to that panel and not know how important the work of this organization is. When you and Julia Brody were talking about the Detox Me kit, I remember the first time we were invited here, Marjorie, was the only time we were ever invited to speak at an event and pee in a cup at the same time. And it was well worth it. And I don't want to end the night by guilt tripping you, but I am going to guilt trip you. If you're here, you know how important this work is. A number of you, a significant number of you, have been generous tonight and made contributions, but a lot of you have not. Please, please, before the program ends, give what you can to support the work of this critical, one-of-a-kind organization. The silent auction, remember the QR codes, the chat box, you have 3 different ways to give money. The silent auction is open until 3 o'clock tomorrow, but do not wait. Search your soul around, make a contribution of whatever you can. And speaking of the silent auction, by the way, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. If we can significantly up the bid on me and Marjorie for that dinner, I am saying right here and now, making a commitment, Marjorie will make a platter of her famous deviled eggs and deliver them to your house whether you want them or not, as a bonus if you do it. So I'm telling you right now, there's nothing like Silent Spring. Please dig deep and make a contribution, Marjorie.
Well, just one quick thing. Silent Spring is making such a huge difference, and breast cancer has impacted all our lives. So their work could not be more important.
So I know I speak for Marjorie. We are honored yet again to be asked to be part of the program. We want to salute the staff, the organization, everybody that participated tonight. And one more time, don't turn this all night without making a contribution to the incredibly important work they do. Singing You Home, I'm pretty sure from her new CD, is yet another performance by the incredibly talented Lisa Loeb. Well, as Groucho Marx once said, there's nothing like good planning. And sadly, that was nothing like good planning. I want to thank Lisa for the effort. Obviously, it was a technical problem on her end. I would sing Stay For You if I thought you could tolerate it, but I won't torture you in that way. I'll just say one more time, we were honored to be here. We're thrilled you're part of tonight. We'll be thrilled even more if you make Silent Spring part of your contribution list. Please do it now. Thanks so much for being here. Have a wonderful evening. Be well.